Hi everybody, it's Thursday and it's Think Differently Thursday. My name is Helen, we're coming from the Forge Church, and today I've got Oliver with me. Hi Oliver.
Hi Helen.
You're obviously much more professional with all of this, Oliver, because you look so well lit and yeah, you just look like you obviously do this a lot, don't you?
There is a lot of my day is spent in front of a camera staring at a screen, so yeah, it's
I can tell.
my normal.
I look like the amateur here. I'm kind of up a corner as well tonight. Oh, never mind. Oliver, I know you a little, but not everybody will. So just give us a little snapshot. Who is Oliver Westmanchol?
Yeah, my name's Oliver. I'm an attendee, a volunteer, and an elder of the Forge Church. I live in Suffolk. Yeah, and I've been coming to the Forge probably for about 14, 15 years now. Okay,
great. And is Suffolk home? Is this where you're from, or have you moved to Suffolk?
Yeah, I didn't grow up in Suffolk. My parents live in Kent, and I grew up in Kent. And actually, the rest of my family are London-based or Essex-based. My wife's family is much more based around in East Anglia, so they're Norfolk and Essex.
Right. So you don't have family around, and I think that's slightly unusual in Suffolk, isn't it? I haven't got much family around, but most of my friends and lots of my contacts and colleagues just have so much family around them in Suffolk. Is that your experience as well?
Yeah, I think we live here because I'm very pragmatic, and when we were looking to move and look for an area, it really was a case of drawing lots of circles around in-laws, family, my parents' work, and if you draw all those circles, you just ended up in little places, tiny little overlapping places in Suffolk. So right. We're here because of that. And I knew nothing about Suffolk, but it's very true. When you move to Suffolk and people ask if you've come far or moved far, they often mean, have you moved 2 villages across? So the idea of moving across the country there, you are well and truly a foreigner. And it's taken the 15 years, I think, before I'm no longer seen as a foreigner.
I remember when I was married and my ex-husband's parents were, from Suffolk, farming family. And one evening we went to see my grandparents in Colchester. They couldn't believe it. They just could not believe that you could travel to Colchester for an evening.
Yeah, that's very true.
And so tell me about your family in growing up. You said that your parents were in Kent and you grew up there. So got siblings?
Yeah, I've got an older brother and a younger brother. My older brother lives in London with his family. My younger brother lives in Colchester with his family. Yeah, and grew up in a very pleasant household in Kent, in Maidstone in Kent. Quite a normal, quite an uneventful upbringing is the way I describe it.
You're like me then, Oliver. You're the middle child.
I am.
Not the oldest, not the youngest.
Yeah, I've never really seen that as a major deal. I think I've always, as brothers, it's fair to say that as brothers, we are not your typical really close family. We get on really well together, but we can easily go 3 months without passing comment, and then life carries on. So I think maybe I've never had any great middle child complex or anything like that, because I don't think I've ever interacted enough for that to be an issue. But we've all got on. We get on really well. We barely ever argue. Never argue.
Lovely.
Which is one of the advantages of very rarely speaking to your brothers, is it? You can't argue with them if you don't speak.
True enough. And you are married to the very lovely Rachel. Tell me, at what point did she come into your life? Where did you meet Rachel?
Yeah, so I grew up in Kent. I went to the University of Birmingham, which is obviously in Birmingham, and Rachel also went to the University of Birmingham. So Rachel grew up in Colchester, went to the University, or in West Mersey in Essex, went to the University of Birmingham. So Rachel was 1 year behind me at university. So we met in my second year and Rachel's first year at university. And actually, so I was doing a 4-year course, Rachel was doing a 3-year course. So we met in my second year, her first year, and we actually got married just before both of our final years. So we sort of together 18 months, then got married. So we both had our final years at university as a married couple. So we did university in Birmingham like that. And actually from that, that's where we sort of I guess we started life. In fact, we sort of bought a house, settled down, had some kids, and it's from Birmingham that we actually moved to Suffolk.
Right. That must have been quite an interesting experience to have been students and then carry on university as a married couple. That must have been quite interesting.
Yeah, it was. I think as I look back on it now, I'm more shocked than I was at the time. It seemed relatively normal, but as I look back, you look back at pictures of yourself at that age, and you just look like an absolute child. And I was. I
And you
got
must have
no
been
idea.
you must have been quite young, were you?
Well, I would have been 21 when we got married.
Right, yeah, which probably perhaps then didn't seem so young, but I think now people get
Yeah.
married so much later, don't they?
Yeah, I look like an absolute child, and so I look back now and you go, well, why did no one stop me? Well, I'm not sure I was qualified to it, but it was really good, and I think it really suited both of us. It is very different. We lived together in a house during our final year, very not studenty, but we both got to, there was less distractions for work and stuff, so it was good. Yeah, it's good.
Sounds a lovely story. And you've said that you've got children. You've got 4 children. So 2020 for your kids, what on earth has it been like? I mean, what's it been like for you as a family that last year?
Yeah, it's been. I don't think it's not been normal for anyone, has it at all?
No.
So, and I can't complain about it because it's been a really dramatic change. But we don't have a big house. We've got a house with enough bedrooms. So, I've got an office to work in. We've not fallen out with each other, so we've got enough space that we can get away from each other. We've enjoyed some of the changes, having more time. I often travel quite a bit, so I was away quite a bit, and I don't mind that, traveling and getting away, but actually we've had more evenings together than we've had before, so it's been fine. I've got my eldest 2 kids are now in the exam year, so last year they sort of skipped it all because they weren't in it. So my eldest is doing his A-levels, second eldest is doing GCSEs, so it's a little bit more, so all the changes probably affect them more. It's more real for them this time. But it's been fine. It's been fine. I think like everyone, we're sick of it now, and that's not about. It's not about the way it is. It's about the fact it's not changing. So I think it's the monotony of it. I think that's the what we found difficult is. It was good as a change to it, but now it's the lack of variety. It's hard to create variety and different pace and different stuff in the moment.
Absolutely. Do you think for your children there will be sort of long-term effects of it? Do you think you'll look back and kind of say, yeah, but don't forget you lived through that year, or you were at that stage when we were all locked down? Do you think it will go on for a very long time, even when we get back to some kind of normal?
Yeah, I think I'm never good. I tend to live life at a bit of a pace. I'm always wondering what I should be doing next. I never stop and reflect on what's now. So it is what it is. We carry on. I think probably as the kids look back at it when they're older, it will, when they tell the story, it will be even more dramatic than it feels now. So I think the lack of freedom, the length of time, like a big significant time of the kids' schooling career, the bizarre wearing masks all the time and having laws stopping you. I just think all of that, I think when you explain it to other people later, when it's not the norm, will sound more dramatic. But at the moment, so I think maybe the long-term ones will be more significant than the short-term. And there's things obviously more significant. And I do feel sorry for the kids in their exam years, and the ones last year and this year too, because I know everyone's in the same boat, so that's fine. But it's just not what everyone signed up for.
No, it's not what you started that sort of school years thinking was going to be the outcome, is it?
No, or even your school career. I think if you look back on it, and I look back on it, there's a certain cycle to it, isn't there? And you leave and you get your exams, and it's something you put in the bank and you move on, and that has been taken away. I think probably I feel more sorry for the people gone to university last year, because that really is formational and stuff. So that I think will be interesting. I guess my hope is that by September next year things will have settled down, but it will affect how the universities are selecting people, what the competition for places, probably even the mix at university, maybe less diversity with less overseas students. So I think all those things, it's impossible to know how they'll have an effect, but they're bound to have an effect.
Yeah, I see it sort of, you're talking at that sort of exit end of schooling, and I see very much of it from that entry side. And so children that would have gone into reception and just missed so much of it, and then went into year one without all of that kind of acclimatizing in reception, and then they're going to go into year two, and I just wonder how much we're going to have to adapt as teachers as well, because they will need to do lots of catching up, I think, in many ways. But as you say, they're all going through it. They're all going through experience at the same time. Yeah, crazy times. So you've said that you're working at home and you've got an office there. What is it you do, Oliver?
So I work for myself. My background is I do anything to do with IT is the short answer. So my sort of specialist area is around data protection and data governance. So it's looking at the ways you manage data, how you make good use of it, and how you do that so it's legally and compliant and protects people's privacy. So my background is very technical. It's IT strategy, systems, building software, all of that. But now I apply it more to the sort of I say legal, it's the whole privacy stuff and looking at protecting people's privacy.
Okay. And being very technical, of course, you play a huge role in what we do in getting our live stream out on a Sunday morning at church. I have no idea how and what you do. You often do it from home, don't you? You're not often in the studio, but you make a lot of that happen as well. We're so grateful to you. Does that give you a buzz? Is that something that you really enjoy?
It is genuine. I think I've always enjoyed technical stuff. The digital online. So my background is I ran a business that did digital marketing and built online systems, so mobile apps, websites, and that's right back from from 2000. So it was in the early days of the internet. So I've always really enjoyed that, very pragmatically building stuff. So I've got a good foundational. Although the technologies have moved on, and I wouldn't even pretend to be up with all what's currently there, but my foundational understanding is good. So I'm generally able to pull things together to make them work, and that's often good enough. Right. So the thing with the streams, they're very talented people. The work the guys do on a Sunday to make it look great, I couldn't ever do at all, but I can tend to get things working, fix them. So that's the role I play now, is generally getting things working and fixing them when they break.
It's amazing. We're so grateful to you. So what you're doing now, is that kind of where you've always been? Is that what you've always been doing?
No, so I said I went to university in Birmingham, which I really enjoyed. I did an engineering degree there, electronic engineering. I've always loved electronics. I still do. Still like building things all the time out of electronics. So I did an electronic engineering degree, but right at the end of that, I moved into more IT stuff. So like I said, building websites, databases, and it was the early days of the internet. And in the early days of the internet, if you could build a website, you were immediately everyone loved you. It was almost like magic those early days. So that's what I did. So I pretty much went straight to from university, and people paid me to build websites, solve problems, databases, and from that I started a business that was doing exactly all those sorts of things. I paired up with a friend who ran a design agency, and we grew that into a digital marketing businesses. So that was building websites, nice websites, branding, identity, mobile apps, all of those things. So I did that for about I never really planned how long I was going to do it for, but it would have been about 15 years I did that for. So I grew it to a decent size. And actually that was in Birmingham. So I moved to Suffolk while still commuting to Birmingham. I did that for about 10 years. And then I eventually left that business and then to basically set up on my own. So that's what I've been doing now. And that was just to put down it's a lot of work to run a business, particularly when you employ quite a lot of people. So I think it was a point in my life I put that down in order to almost do the polar opposite, which is to work on my own, have no employees, and none of that sort of management stress.
Right. Yeah. Sounds really interesting. And so would you say that everything that's happened over the last year with coronavirus, has that had a big impact on work for you? You said that you're obviously not traveling as much as you were. Is that the biggest impact, or has there been other things?
Yeah, I can't complain, Helen. I really can't. So I'm going to try and do this without complaining. It is. I have found enough work to keep me busy through the year. That is the honest answer with it. So I have not known any point in the year when the next work was going to come from, but projects that I've started have carried on and rolled on, and ones that have dried up have sort of been replaced by other ones. So that's been great. I was but because I'm self-employed, people pay me for a piece of work and that's it, and it ends and stops. I don't know what's going to happen this year. I would say that the video conferencing thing works fine for delivering a project you started. If people know you, they trust you, you can do it. It's much harder to find new work and build new relationships. So I think last year has been fine. Next year will be possibly tougher. One of the things I find is the monotony of it. So I've always worked from home most of the time. I like it, but that tends to be punctuated by going away, like I have to travel across the country, spend it overnight, which gives you a bit of a rhythm and a bit of variation. I found that the monotony of working from home all the time was just boring. Is the honest answer. And I'm not sort of person who struggles with self-motivation or working hard, but I have felt the days have felt long, sitting here staring at the screen. So that's it. So and you know, like I said, I can't complain because I've had work, it's kept me busy. But I'm looking forward to a chance of breaking some of that monotony.
Oliver, I know that you are a Christian. So at what point was that decision made in life for you? Can you pinpoint a time where you made that decision, or was it a gradual thing for you?
Yeah, I was brought up in a house where we were regular churchgoers. Both my parents are Christians, and actually through most of from probably the age of 9. I actually went to a different church to my parents. So I went to a church which I preferred. So I had friends there. And so I've had a sort of an independent faith, I guess, while I was growing up. However, I don't think it was really real to me. I didn't really understand what it went. And I went to university pretty confident I was just going to put down not my faith, but certainly my church going and just go, look, let's see what happens from here. So I was really comfortable with that. I just made no particular involvement in sort of the Christian Union or going to church, and just thought I would see how things went. And all I can say,
why did you think you were going to do that?
Why did I think I was going to do that? I think you change a lot through that time, and there's a lot going on between sort of the ages of 15 to 17, 18, just in terms of your whole life. Your independence of thought changes a lot at that point. And I think particularly when it's university, you no longer have the direct responsibility to the people around you to live out their expectations of you. And that's saying my parents never pressured me to go to church or anything like that. But there is an inherent pressure that comes with an expectation of how you live your life. So, and you didn't have that at university, so you get to try things differently. So I was quite relaxed about it. But I ended up at university. I lived in a flat. It was part of a halls of residence, but they couldn't fit me into the hall, so they put me in this small flat with 5 other people. And what I discovered when I was there is that of the 6 people in the flat, 2 of the other people who were in years above me were Christians. One of the guys led the Christian Union in the halls of residence we're in, and actually he went on to lead the Christian Union at university. So that was fine. So I think they probably knew my background as part of it, and I just carried on as I planned, not go to church. And interestingly, the guy who I lived with, he was great. And after the first term, he said, Oliver, he said, why don't you come to church or the Christian Union? He said, of all the people, you help the Christian Union more than anyone who comes each week, and you're not even part of it. So you see like barbecues and I'll help anyone if they want a hand. He said, you're there for everything. You set up, clean up, do the whole lot, and you don't come. So why don't you just come to the Christian Union? And I remember really clearly just realizing that I'd come to university with a plan not to go to church. And I think just God had other plans for me. And I just don't think it was a coincidence that I ended up there with those 2 guys. I hugely respected them. They didn't let me go. They followed me up, invited me to the Christian Union. And as I look back, so I would say I became a Christian at university because it was the first time I can honestly say that it was my decision to go, to engage with it, and to make it a part of my life. So so I can't pinpoint the exact day, but it might well have been that conversation.
Interesting. I think that's really interesting to hear from a parent's point of view as well. And I guess you you will hold that quite dear, won't you? If your kids get to stages, whether it be about faith or anything else, where they just want to break away from what family has been and just kind of explore for themselves, you've got that your own experience to call on, haven't you, of just allowing. It's a hard thing to do, I think, as parents, but it's what we need to do, isn't it? Go and discover your own thing.
Absolutely. I think the idea, if people don't ever develop independence of thought, then it's hard to imagine how they'll develop independence of faith. So, and unfortunately, with independence, the only way of getting that is by being independent and removing that framework. So I don't, I'm not naive. I don't think that everyone who makes the decision I made will suddenly come back to their faith, and there's a whole lot of pressures in life. And actually, in those short gaps, you can screw up and make real big mistakes. But there is no other option, is there? The other option is to keep people wrapped up and never to allow them to develop their faith. And we're all different as well. So, my sons and my daughters, they'll have very different experiences and different life experiences and challenges. And that'll all be part of what makes their faith their own. Yeah,
absolutely. And so do you think that in some ways your faith shapes how you respond or react to, for instance, this difficult year that we've had? Does being a Christian alter your perspective, do you think?
So yes is the answer, but it's like everything else in life. Along your journey through your life, you meet all sorts of different people. Some of the loveliest, hardest working people with the most integrity that I know through life aren't Christians. Some of the most miserable, negative people that I know are Christians. So there's nothing inherent in that I think makes you spot. And I don't doubt the faith of those. I wasn't trying to. The people hold their own faiths and positions. I'm just saying it's not a simple. It's not a simple relationship. It will be impossible for me not to have my faith affecting how I've been through this year, because I can't quite separate those two. My faith is just part of how I do life. And that sometimes that's not perfect at all. I inherently worry a lot. Just because
Really? You don't strike me as a worrier. Really?
I worry about most things, but particularly money, which is ironic. Like I said, I've always earned enough to keep the family, but not the fear of not earning enough is one of my biggest drivers and one of my stresses. So yes, it's affected. I would say in my head I can trust that things are going to be fine. But then lots of people can trust that too. I would say the biggest difference is that I think it's the idea of hope, and that I see this as a really rubbish time, and I'm not enjoying lots of it too. But I do think that in the global scale, in the history, in terms of history, this is a real minor blip, and that the hope that comes from my faith is good news, and it's all going to end in success. So this is part of the journey. We'll look back on it, and it will fit into part of the story that I tell at the end of my life. And I also think that our role in this is to be hopeful to other people, and that's not to be unrealistic or over optimistic or to downplay. There's real losses, people dying from here and losing family from this. However, it's my role to point out the fact that there is hope and there's more to it. So yes, it has, but I just don't think that my faith is a magic wand, or anyone's faith is a magic wand that gets them through.
Absolutely.
Through this.
And you alluded there to the fact that faith isn't a standalone thing separate from other parts of your life, and I think we would often try to convey that as Christians, that faith isn't compartmentalized here and we do this or we do church, but that actually it's something that permeates everything that we do. And so have you got examples of that, like maybe in some aspect of life where actually faith was very central in all of this?
I do. I think I used to be far more conscious of that gap between your faith and the rest of life. And now I think as I've got more experience, I realize genuinely it is just the same thing. I can't, like everything all my decisions are influenced by what I think, not just by my faith, they're influenced by everything around us, aren't they? So it is inseparable from it. Whether the good or bad decisions I've made, they're all inseparable from the fact that I've got that faith position. And I hope that that's more deliberate. So I think that if I look back, I can there are really significant parts of my journey that I know were faith-based. So I talked about running a business in Birmingham, which I absolutely loved, and my colleagues were great. We did great work. I genuinely really enjoyed the people. I think it's excellent. But around, as you run a business, you're surrounded by people who are ambitious, want to grow, and actually that's the game you play. You look at how you can grow, how you can market better. And something inside me has always been uncomfortable. It's a game that I play, and I could do it well. If you tell me the rules to a game, I'll try and play it well. But fundamentally, I knew it wasn't what I was put on the planet to do, and wasn't what ultimately fulfilled me. And actually, around the time when we were looking, well, what do we do next with the business? I went for my first trip to Africa with Hands at Work. So someone invited me to join a team. And in fact, I joined a healthcare team. I know nothing about healthcare. I'm utterly useless in that capacity. But I joined a team, went to Africa, and it was possibly one of the most significant events or experiences of my life, in that I came back from that, and it genuinely, the way I describe it is, it altered my horizons. So I saw a bigger picture of the world. I'm not pretending that you go to Africa once and suddenly you're the world's expert on developing economies, but I can't describe what it did, but it made me...
So was this one of our short-term visits from the Forge to Zambia?
Yes. So yes, it went to Zambia, to visit. It's including Maposa, the community we sponsor, and a number of other communities around there. So delivering healthcare to them. So yeah, it was really good. And I think all those things that somewhere deep inside me, when I was thinking, growing a business, it's just a bit of a game. It's not real life. I think when I saw quite how varied life was, you go, oh, it really is a game. And not only is it just a game, it's a game that only really makes sense if you, you're playing it in isolation. If you only makes sense compared to your peers, compared to the business down the road. It doesn't make any logic when you talk about people haven't got enough food tomorrow. And it makes all of your game seem like a really ridiculous activity. And that wasn't, I came back and thought, oh, business is rubbish. It just made me realize I cannot do this for the rest of my life. And at some point I knew if you're not going to do it for the rest of your life, it means at some point you've got to stop doing it, which is blindingly obvious. But once you've started a business and you grew it, and you've got a business partner, and you've got 20 employees, and you're responsible for them paying their mortgages, and you've got an inherent responsibility to your business partner because you've signed up to run this business and grow it, I knew that leaving a business is actually much harder than starting it. But I made a commitment. I knew that I had to make a commitment to be brave enough to leave that at some point if it didn't do it. So actually what happened, it wasn't immediately, but over the next 5 years, we looked at selling the business or growing it. And I realized after a few years that I was just going to have to be bold and to leave, which was fundamentally financially a really bad decision. So there's no, that's not what you meant to do. That's not what people encourage you to do when you grow a business. But I knew I had to be brave enough to do it. And even without an income or a plan, I had to trust that the future was definitely beyond that. And that's what I did actually about 5 years ago now. So I'd say that decision is, I guess, a very tangible example of where the faith played a role in how I chose to. So
at that time, would you have kind of looked for? So obviously, something began in your heart and in your mind while you were in Africa, and then I think you're saying it was a long period of time coming to that fruition of that. So would you say that during that time, you felt God confirming that decision in various ways, or I'm just trying to unpick how did you know that was right, type thing?
So part of the reason I knew that was right, Helen, is because, like I said, I worry about everything.
I do now. I didn't before.
But despite that, I was still confident this was the right thing to do. And I was walking away from what I fundamentally was penciled down as my pension. It certainly was my income. And it was an income that had kept... my wife has not had to have paid employment. We've got 4 kids. We don't live exotically at all, but we live comfortably. So we don't have to count every penny, and it had provided that. And I was going into put that down, lose that security, and have no idea how I'd ever get back to a position where I earned the same amount of money to keep the family again. But I still knew it was the right decision. So, and that was after, say, 4 or 5 years. And I look at that, and I'm not the sort of person who hears God really clearly and speaks audible words to me, but I go, well, that confidence is ultimately faith, isn't it? Faith is sort of that sense of which you don't know how it's going to work out, but it will work out. So that was genuinely a faith for me. And I look, where does faith come from? Faith's only got one place to come from, that's from God. So therefore, that's God giving me that faith. So did he speak to me and reaffirm it? No. But I think he gave me the confidence to go through with it, and the faith, and confidence and the faith to go through with it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm just thinking, like you're saying about a big change in your life around that sort of time, and I guess during that time you learned stuff about yourself. I'm just wondering if you just looked back on this last year. I think for all of us, it's been almost this opportunity to reflect a bit, hasn't it? And I've discovered things about myself. I've discovered things that I've enjoyed and I thought I wouldn't, and I couldn't do this. And I think it's been a really fascinating time. I mean, we wouldn't have chosen it, and it's been so dreadful for so many people. But as you look back on this last 12 months, have you learned stuff about yourself?
Yeah, I think after I left my business, I took a year off, which is a real privilege. But that's what I did. So that's what it gave me. And I spent a lot of time trying to take that step back. And so I feel like I learned a lot about myself during that time.
Yeah, sure.
And was a good opportunity to work out what I was good at, what I like doing, what I don't like doing. So in this last year, so I felt like I had quite a good handle.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So, but over this last year, what I've learned is one of the things I used to not enjoy, but used to resent was having to travel. So I'd work in London, all over the country. You know, you'd have to go away if you've got to do a meeting, stay overnight, do work, and it was always a real disruption. It's a right pain because you've got routines in life, you've got kids, and it becomes a lot of driving, a lot of time on the train, all those. So I would say I didn't like that traveling. But what I've worked out this year is actually I really do. And that is more about, so I go through a lot of audiobooks. I think I've probably gone through sort of 80 different audiobooks over the last 10 years, because, do a lot of driving. So, it's hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of stuff, but you don't get that opportunity when you're at home. You just can't just put your headphones in and listen to a book for 3 hours. Right. And so, I actually like driving. So I think that which was quite, and actually even going away, because it breaks the routine of being in the same place, actually I think is really important to me. I'd also say, I've never quite got the introvert extrovert thing. I just don't believe that anyone is either one or the other, really. And
you're allowed to say that, Oliver.
No, I just, but it's such a complicated thing to explain. But I think what I've really worked out is that again, I don't mind my own company. I'm far better working on my own, but I need some socializing, and it's not a lot. It's often socializing in a work environment, so around a task. But I've worked out that if I don't have that for long enough, it really does just demotivates me. So I think I didn't realize how much I needed that. I always loved the opportunity to come back to my office, shut the door. It's absolutely silent in here. My office is at the bottom of the garden, it's away from everyone. And I thought this was great. This is my perfect working environment. I think what I've worked out is it is, but only when combined with opportunities to get out. And I don't think I realized quite how important that was to me.
It's that thing about not realizing what we love until we haven't got it and it's not there anymore, isn't it? I think I've almost realized the opposite about myself. I love going out, and a normal week for me, I definitely would eat out more than I would eat in. And so the thought of not doing that and not seeing people so much was just like, what's life going to be? And I've really enjoyed being in. I've enjoyed eating here every day, and it's really surprised me. It's been a really interesting thing to learn. I think it'd be interesting, wouldn't it, to ask our families what they've learned about us during this time.
Absolutely.
Or perhaps
Yeah,
not.
absolutely.
We won't ask them.
Yeah, I won't. But yeah, I think it's true. I think we've obviously lived on top of each other much more.
Yeah.
I get bored easily. Just
Right.
anyway, I think partly it's a human thing, isn't it? Of boredom,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
this won't last forever. And
No.
maybe we'll come back to those things which we've missed now and
Yeah.
we possibly took for granted, make
Yeah.
more opportunity to make use of
Yeah.
them. I don't know, but we'll
We'll
get a fresh
probably
view of
do.
life,
We'll
won't we?
probably, our new normal will be different, won't it? I don't think anyone's life will go back to what it was before. It will be elements of what's new and elements of what we had before, I think.
Yeah, it will be, but I do think humans are incredibly bad at judging how they'll behave in a different situation in the future. I do think that people could get back into old habits really quickly. The world won't be the same, but we almost can't imagine life being normal again now, because for 18 months, well, for a year, it's been all completely confused and we've been locked in and so. We changed into that very quickly. I know we were forced into it, but we changed into that weird life very quickly.
Yeah.
It wouldn't take us long to change into another weird life that is different again. So I can't predict what that's going to be like. But I don't think it necessarily will be a slow thing coming out the other side. I think things will open. People will be different.
Yeah,
but,
definitely.
Yeah, we'll see what it's like.
When you first introduced yourself, you said one of the things you do is that you are an elder at the Forge. How would you explain that? What does that mean, and what do you do?
Yeah, so the elders of the Forge, we would say we're an elder-led church. And that's ultimately, it's the elders who've got responsibility for the direction in which a church heads. Now, the elders don't have any sort of day-to-day executive responsibility. They volunteer, and all the elders will volunteer their time and their skills in different ways. But they set ultimately the direction for the church, or the objectives. And the objectives for a church are not complicated. They're for people to become Christians and hear the good news. That's ultimately what it's about. So we hold that, and then we, as elders, choose a staff team, and that staff team are the people who are far better placed than us as elders to actually make that happen. So the staff team are the talented ones. They're the ones that are have the gifts and skills that are best able to engage people and share that good news. And the elders just set that direction for it, so you can call them the spiritual oversight of it. But actually, they also hold ultimate responsibility. So if the church is not going in the right direction, or has the wrong emphasis or the wrong motivations behind it, it's the elders that need to act to step in to make sure that's the case. So lots of the time, it's stepping back and basking in the glory of talented people like you, Helen, and very occasionally, it's stepping in when things aren't going in the right direction. So that's what we meet every couple of weeks. So we do meet quite often, and we interact mainly through Steve Fenning, the senior leader, and he keeps us really close into things. And a lot of the time, we're there to discuss matters and to provide assurance to Steve and to the team that things are right. And obviously, at times like this, some of those are more significant. There are risks, there are all sorts of unknowns, and sometimes there are decisions that need to be made where there isn't enough information to make them. So it's not like some problems you can't just work at them harder to find the answer. And actually, in those judgment things, it would be unfair for the staff team, for example, to have to make those, because there's a risk in them, and at times like the elders will discuss them and will make those decisions.
It's great. We're so grateful to you, because you give so much of your time. When you look back on this last year for us as a church, what would you say have been our positives? I mean, it would have been easy to kind of almost assume there weren't going to be any and it was going to be crisis, but we have had. What would you kind of cite as the positives for us over this last year?
Yeah, initially, there were loads of positives for me. I genuinely, so I have, so you mentioned the stream. So I've been involved in doing a live stream from church for, I think, about 10 years. It might be 9 years, but we've done a live stream almost every week for 9 years. I think we've missed half a dozen in that entire 9 years because something screwed up. Now that has started life as a really, really, I mean, properly
I would have had no idea it's been that long.
No, it's been a long time. And it's been for about, let's say it was 9 years. For 8 of those years, it's basically just, there's been low numbers of people interacting each week. It was a camera at the back of church. It's technically worked. you watch it, it switches off, people watch it later. Numbers of people using online video has grown over the years, but we've never pushed it. It's never had anyone to own it. I would have loved to see it. I think that I've always thought that digital's got a really important part to play. Not that it replaces church, but an important part to play in it. But what it needs is talented people who know how to use it as a tool. So I can make it work as a tool, but it's just a tool. And a tool without a skilled operator is useless. So that's what it's been for years. I love the fact that overnight, it suddenly, rather than being a tool, became something that was inherently part of the mission, put it that way. It was rough. We had it, but suddenly people were trying different things every week. The guys who put Sunday mornings on were saying, well, okay, how can we use this tool? What's it good at? What could we do differently next week? How could it be better? What's the engagement like? Asking all the questions that I've really wanted someone to ask for a long time. Yeah. So it shot right up the priority list. Yeah. And it wasn't even the digital part, it was the innovation for me. It was the fact people were asking questions, well, what can we do? How can it be better? What's it look like? So that's been really good. Yeah. I'm really glad we've done it. So the other part of the innovation, I think just getting us to question why on earth are we doing what we're doing is an opportunity we don't often get. Yeah. So the opportunity to stop meeting in our 3 locations, which would be unthinkable normally, because it would be an ordeal to suggest to someone, oh, hang on a minute, well, let's take 3 months off and let's see what happens. It wouldn't ever happen. No. So I think that idea of going, oh, let's see what happens and what do we want to go back to? I think that's good. I'm not. I don't have a great vision of what the future looks like or the answer to this, and I do think a lot will be lost from community, from people not meeting up. So I'm not entirely positive about it, but I do think that opportunity is really important for us, and I think we need to be really careful about what we choose to go back to doing. Just let's realize that we shouldn't go back to doing what we're doing. We should think carefully about it, and I'd love to see more innovation come in. So let's get that spirit of trying things and seeing what sticks. That would be a great way going forward. I'd love to see that. So yeah, those things have been good. I would say that I just think a lot more of the stuff has been miserable. I won't pretend. I miss meeting up with people. I think it's sad that some of that community is really hard to have. You glimpse people on a Zoom call that you haven't seen. I haven't seen them in ages, and you think that's a real loss. That's really sad. It's sad for my kids who aren't seeing people 3 generations above them, worshipping God and meeting together. I think that model is sad. I think it's sad them not seeing really committed youth leaders face to face. So I think there's a lot missing from it. So it's definitely not 100% positive.
Yeah, definitely. I think all those sort of incidental relationships we have with people because we're in the same place and we see them, missing them, aren't we? Just like the people that you would just touch base with and how's your week been? And yeah, it's tricky. It has been tricky. If you and I think you've just said, I don't know what the future is. So I hear you saying that, but if we look at ourselves as a church this time next year, we don't know what we're going to look like, but what is your hope for us?
So I think that I think it'd be a real shame to lose lots of the online stuff. So I think that what it has done is get church out of a building and into where we're currently working. So everyone works online and digitally, and it's got people used to a different way of interacting. So hopefully we'll still have elements of that. I really hope that we're meeting up. I think there is a genuine loss in meeting up together. So I think whatever it is, I feel that the church has got a really significant role in facilitating community. So we would say we want to be a church community that the unchurched want to be part of, which is great, but you've got to be a community that somebody else wants to be part of. So I think facilitating community is really good and really hard work. So one way of facilitating community is opening up a building on a Sunday morning, get everyone in, give them coffee, give them a good time, make them talk. That's one way. But I think we've realized there's more to it than that. And I really hope the church is just the sort of presence that makes community happen where it wouldn't have happened before. And that might be in villages. I don't know what that looks like, but maybe we'll be more active in the villages we live in to make those communities work. And I hope the church will see it. I hope the society sees us as community makers, and actually that community that we make is wholesome, it's good, it's full of hope, and it's something that is attractive to people who don't have a faith. So that's it. That's a woolly answer, isn't it?
No, it's great. That is really great. And it has been so great to talk to you and to find out a bit more about you and to hear your thoughts and your wisdom. I've got one more question. I like an "and finally" question. And so this is Think Differently Thursday. If you could make one person think differently, who would that be, and what would you make them think?
Helen, you told me you were going to ask me this question before, and I still don't know. I still don't know. I am the person Donald Trump. I put him on my list.
I did wonder.
Yeah, and that's not even. I just. It's been a real wake-up call to me how influential people are, and it's not about facts, and I'm so factual and logical. I think it's a good model, isn't it, that how influential people can be to change how other people think. And in a bad way, you can see lots of negative stuff, not just from Donald Trump, from all sorts of people, but I see there's a real positive there as well. Imagine if someone was, as some reason, as charismatic and as attractive as Donald Trump in changing opinions. If they had a real positive and could engage people in that way, wouldn't the world be significant? So if you could change Donald Trump into a version that was full of positivity and hope for the future, that's what I'd do.
That's great. You're going to change the most powerful man in the world. Well done.
Yeah, just that one. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I can't thank you enough. Thank you. I realise that you've given me this time this afternoon, and I'm so grateful to you. So grateful for all you do as an elder, and particularly what you do on a Sunday morning, helping to make church happen and get it out there. And really lovely to speak to you. So thank you so much, Oliver.
Right.
See you.
Thank you very much, Helen.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.